In the shadows of the manor courtyard, Elishnish found Baroness Zaradnik seated on a bench with text in hand. "Good evening, Lady Zaradnik. How was your day at the dojo?"
Normal. I didn't cause any trouble if that's what you're asking."
"I was just asking how your day was." Lady Zaradnik smirked up at her. Elishnish squirmed under the human noble's scrutiny. How was she able to do that? "Is something the matter?" the Baroness asked.
"It's nothing."
"In that case, please come and join me. I haven't had the pleasure of your company for weeks." She examined their surroundings. The household staff were all asleep, save for the undead. Some things in the manor had been moved around, but there were no drastic changes. Feet carrying her forward on tentative steps, she went to stand in front of Lady Zaradnik. "There's no need to be so formal when it's just us," the Baroness told her. "You must want to relax after a long day's work." Closing the book in her hand and setting it aside, Lady Zaradnik shifted over to make room on the patio bench. Elishnish eyed the book she had put down. "Fundamental Principles of Magocratic Governance," Elishnish murmured, Volume 3? "You've read it?" "I don't even know what the title means." "That daunting, huh?" Lady Zaradnik grinned. "All of my friends have read it already. I have a lot of catching up to do." The human noblewoman patted the spot on the bench beside her. Elishnish seated herself, giving the book another glance. "What is the book about?" "It's a treatise, a formal academic exploration, on how the government of a nation ruled by magic casters might be organized. It's really quite fascinating." "Who would write such a thing?" "The valedictorian of the Imperial Magic Academy's graduating class of this year, Frian Wailia van Gushmand." Lady Zaradnik looked down at the book, placing a hand on it with a rueful shake of her head. "That a noble scion of the Empire could produce this, it truly demonstrates how far ahead Baharuth is relative to Riastais when it comes to gaining a competitive edge in magical integration. She's the same age as I am, yet all I can do is put holes in things while barely managing to keep my domain together. Rumor is that His Majesty has taken an interest in her work, so it's essentially become required reading for every noble of the Sorceress Kingdom." "You're not going to force me to read this, are you?" "I believe you would benefit from its content," Lady Zaradnik said, "but I won't force you to read it. Since dragons are innate arcane casters, I thought you might have developed an interest in it on your own." "This Frian Gushmand wrote something for dragons in there?" "I couldn't say for sure," the Baroness replied. "What you take away from it depends entirely on you. I don't have a dragon's perspective on things." A cool current of air spiraled in from the open roof of the courtyard, playing over the ornamental shrubs and trees arranged around the patio. Elishnish eyed the human noblewoman's light green dress. Was she not chilly? Summer was waning, and most of the city's denizens had already transitioned to the fashions of autumn. Elishnish reached into her infinite haversack, calling her notebook to hand. If Lady Zaradnik could understand the absurd-looking tone between them, maybe she could decipher Master Tien's notes. Out of curiosity, Elishnish asked, "Can you make any sense out of this?" She flipped through until she reached the page Master Tien had used. Lady Zaradnik took the notebook in one hand, pursing her lips as she scanned the content. "I believe so," she said. "Really?" Elishnish straightened in her seat. "It's been something I've been studying in order to help my subjects pursue their chosen vocations more effectively. Granted, they are all of civilian occupation, but I apply these lines of thinking to myself, as well." Should she be surprised or should it have been expected? The Baroness was working hard to shape her domain and its people, but she knew little of what thoughts went into the changes she made. "Is there something in particular you'd like to know?" Lady Zaradnik asked. "I have no idea what he's trying to say at all," Elishnish answered. "I've learned a great deal from Master Tien about the fundamentals of unarmed combat, but anything advanced he has to offer appears to be solely for key users. Bards are not key users, but he suggests that we may have some methods unique to our class." "That seems perfectly plausible to me." "It does?" Lady Zaradnik returned the notebook to Elishnish. She read it again. Nope, it was still as esoteric as ever. "Every job class has something special to it," the Baroness explained. "Usually several somethings. From farmers to blacksmiths to bards. Physical combat classes all have several systems available to be harnessed that are associated with their fighting capabilities. How everything comes together gives each job class its distinct flavor. That's what Master Tian said, but I don't get the whole thing about systems or whatever. It's a sort of informal catch-all term, Lady Zaradnik said. The bards in the Adventurer Guild have access to a broad set of non-combat skills: stealth, detection, spell songs and physical combat ability. Most prefer using bows or crossbows, though they still know how to defend themselves with a sidearm if it becomes necessary. I see. Then what about me? Elishnish pointed to herself. I'm not a regular bard. You're not, Lady Zaradnik smiled slightly. Since you're a dragon, my first guess would be that a dancer is a natural path for draconic bards. It leverages your racial advantages and allows you to maintain spell songs without needing to vocalize them. This much, Elishnish understood. Being pretty much the only thing that she understood, it gave her the sense of being stuck with no progress beyond figuring out how to turn spell songs into dance forms. Are there any combat drills that you could demonstrate for me? Lady Zaradnik asked. Perhaps something can be discerned from the way that you've learned to fight. This is how I've been developing martial arts. Since you've been standing back in the Adventurer Guild examinations, I haven't ever seen you participate directly in combat. Elishnish rose from her seat, padding over to the center of the patio. Lady Zaradnik crossed her ankles under the bench and leaned forward with interest. Entering into her form of restoration, Elishnish went through several of the practice drills that Master Tian had all of the disciples at the Justice Dragon Dojo were made to perform for hours on end. Doing them on her own felt distinctly discomforting, especially with Lady Zaradnik keenly watching her from the side. Eventually, her demonstration faltered and she was left fidgeting on the patio. I'm hardly an expert, Lady Zaradnik said, but what part of that was dancing? I can dance, too, Elishnish replied. But shouldn't a dancer be incorporating their dance into combat? Lady Zaradnik asked. I thought that was the whole idea. Have you observed other dancers around the city? Elishnish shook her head. I think the theaters should have them, the Baroness said. Maybe we could go watch one of their plays one of these days, or maybe you just need a dance partner. Lady Zaradnik rose from her seat, pulling a spear from the infinite haversack on her right hip. What are you doing? Elishnish asked. Combat is often referred to as a dance by the more romantically inclined. The Baroness' weapon flowed through several movements. This is an unenchanted spear, so any damage that you manage to take should be taken care of by your ring of regeneration. But I don't want to take any damage. Then I suppose you had better start dancing. Lady Zaradnik smiled mischievously. The spearhead darted towards Elishnish's feet, and she hopped back in alarm. The human noblewoman followed through on her attack, forcing Elishnish into the corner of the courtyard with a series of rapid jabs. Elishnish brought her arm up when the weapon came down in a diagonal chop. She blocked the attack, but the tip of the weapon smacked her in the head anyways. Elishnish rubbed her head with a confused frown, and Lady Zaradnik laughed. Half-spend, the Baroness told her as she stepped back. A spear might look like a straight and pointy weapon, but it has a certain degree of flexibility. If I had used a martial art just now, that would have probably hurt. Lady Zaradnik came after her again. This time, Elishnish guided the incoming strikes wide as she carefully navigated her way around the open space. You learn quickly. Most of the iron ranks spend the first few days constantly flinching away after getting knocked around. They don't hurt, and they're pretty easy to follow. She dodged to the side with a gasp as the next strike came in, 3 times faster than before. The flow of the spear changed, and Elishnish started to feel like she was being herded along. You'll have to counterattack soon, Lady Zaradnik warned her. If all you do is stay on defense, people will figure out how to break through. It didn't seem that way. Despite their increased pace, the attacks were still harmless and easy to follow. The spear abruptly turned into 3, jabbing in at her from different angles. What? Elishnish knocked one of them aside, dodging the other 2 as she stepped in to close the distance. Lady Zaradnik's spear haft came across to intercept her blow, and a booted heel kicked Elishnish away. Much better, the Baroness said. You looked a lot more like you were dancing there. Your spear, what just happened? A second stage martial art, Lady Zaradnik replied. Didn't it look ridiculous? Ridiculous might be a bit of an understatement, Elishnish told her. Can all adventurers do that? Lady Zaradnik relaxed her stance. After staring at her weapon for a moment, she put it away.
The veterans from Rainbow are capable of third-stage martial arts, she told her. As far as the newer members are concerned, I think I'm the only one with the background required to advance this far. The Adventurer Guild's curriculum should eventually raise everyone to a similar set of standards, but it is something that will take time. How much time? The Guildmaster tends to be optimistic, but he estimates that it shouldn't take more than 3 or 4 years to develop a suite of second-stage martial arts appropriate to one's rank. Advancement doesn't stop there, of course. Absurd. How was a poor dragon like Ilishnish supposed to be able to keep up with such nonsense? Too fast. She complained. In the time that it takes me to grow a few centimeters, a human can learn a myriad of these insane martial arts. This is unacceptable. Lady Zaradnik let out a snort, seating herself back on the bench. I didn't come remotely close to landing a solid hit, she said. There are many races with powerful, natural advantages in this world, enough to be insurmountable to the average human. The tenets of my faith state that the ability to develop many skills and techniques is humanity's advantage. That, given enough time, training and equipment, humans may surpass other races in martial strength. A shadow crossed over the Baroness' face, and she cast her gaze down at the patio stones. It does not mean that other races are incapable of learning to at least some degree, she said. If anything, it seems that their natural advantages keep them in the lead. I haven't yet seen the point where humans surpass other races, but it should be there somewhere. Adherents of my faith constantly strive to bring us closer, bit by bit, generation by generation. So I can do it too? These impossible-looking techniques. I don't see why not, Lady Zaradnik replied. This may sound a bit strange, but to explore your options as a dancer, you should focus on the more fantastical elements associated with the vocation. Things that don't make sense based on what you know of reality, preposterous tales and accounts you may otherwise believe to be the product of inebriated imaginations. That sounds like a sure way to get myself hurt. Ilishnish crinkled her nose. The Baroness was only able to supply a shrug in return. If anything, she said, it's the other way around. I was grounded in over a decade of mundane martial discipline when I joined the Adventurer Guild. That grounding blinded me to the absurd realities of our world. It blinded everyone. The proctors assumed I knew what I was doing, and I assumed that I was doing everything right. I did everything I could to try to solve the problem through conventional means. Only when I was able to free myself from that rigid, conventional thinking was I able to finally grasp martial arts. So you're saying that these systems like martial arts, fall under the broad concept of a vocation, or job class. These systems are what should belong under a certain concept, made manifest by the concept itself. It is arbitrary rather than something one can come up with through normal reasoning. It is a theory that still requires much testing to prove, Lady Zaradnik said, but yes, that is an apt way to put it. You appear to have a more concise way of understanding this. The concept of a draconic bard was what drew me to becoming a bard in the first place, Ilishnish replied. I learned all the things that I thought bards should know, but I was also limited by what I didn't know. As you say, these arbitrary systems are not something that would occur to me as conventionally possible, thus I would have never discovered it on my own. It appeared that she owed Lady Zaradnik yet another weighty favor. She should have to address the imbalance, lest something horrible befall her. Another gust of night wind was sent spiraling down through the opening above, sending the sense of Lady Zaradnik's manner swirling around them. With Ilishnish's personal conundrum tentatively on its way to being solved, other details stood out to her perception. One of them filled her with a sense of growing alarm. Her eyes widened and she stepped back 3 paces. Lady Zaradnik, she asked, what happened to your scent? Is something the matter with my scent? Lady Zaradnik asked. It's not as strong as it was before, Ilishnish answered. It's barely even there. It's as if you have a scent, but it vanishes shortly after leaving your body. The only people that I know who are like this are Lady Shultier, the Vampire Brides and Miss Yuri. And they were all undead. But the person before her was supposed to be a human. Lady Zaradnik released a sigh, and her lips turned up in a self-deprecating smile. As expected of a dragon, there's no fooling your senses. I suppose I'll need a way to make up for my weak scent from now on. Maybe that's why Lady Shultier and her vampire brides use perfume. What? This again? Is this telepathy? Hegemel said something about pets getting telepathy. Since when did you turn me into a pet? Relax, it's an ability unrelated to your being a pet. What you probably suspect is true, however, I've become one of the undead. But I was like this when you found me in that hut with Gudrun. How come you didn't notice back then? How could she just casually talk into her head after such a revelation? Did she feel nothing over becoming one of the living dead? Perhaps it was a part of Lady Schultier's nefarious schemes. The human, no, the undead woman rose to her feet. Elishnish took another step back, and the Baroness gave her a hesitant look. I have no intention of harming you. Not that I could do much if it came down to a fight, as you've just demonstrated. She held out a hand towards Elishnish. Here, you may sniff and poke and prod me until you're satisfied. I have no wish for this to negatively affect our relationship. Elishnish eyed the proffered hand but made no move to investigate. Why do you keep talking to me like that? Because it is a secret that I've only revealed to a select few. The roof opens up to the city beyond, and you never know who might be listening. A noble of the Sorceress Kingdom becoming one of the undead is probably something to be expected, but at the same time, it's probably too soon for most people to know. Fears that they, too, will be transformed, may start a panic amongst the citizenry. Elishnish tentatively reached out to grasp the Baroness' hand. It was warm and soft, feeling no different than it had before. If she truly had become one of them, it was of a kind unknown to any of the lore that she had studied. Aside from her constantly vanishing scent, she was a living human by every other indication. Lady Zaradnik's fingers gently closed around hers. Let's head up to my solar for a bit more privacy, Preoccupied with coming to grips over the Baroness' new state, Elishnish allowed herself to be led up the stairs. Was there any way for her to prove that the undead woman was the same person as before? She could only think of one thing, but she wasn't sure if Lady Zaradnik would understand. When the door to the solar shut behind them, Elishnish let go of Lady Zaradnik's hand and cleared her throat. I have but one question for you, she said. What proof do you have that you are who you say you are? That you are not instead simply a shadow of what you once were? Her question had a telling effect on the Baroness. The undead woman spun on her heel, giving her an uncertain look that Elishnish had never witnessed out of her before. Several moments passed, and Lady Zaradnik plopped herself down onto one of the cushioned chairs in the room. I'm afraid I don't understand what you mean by that. She thought not. Elishnish scratched her temple, trying to come up with an appropriate analogy. Consider His Majesty's undead servitors, Elishnish said. Do you know how they are brought into existence? I've only read about summoning magic, Lady Zaradnik replied, but it's something about using mana to conjure their physical form. I think I heard that His Majesty uses skills similar to wild elder liches to make them permanent with the use of a corpse. Is a newborn elder lich as a newborn creature to this world? No, they aren't, Lady Zaradnik shook her head. They come with a wide array of skills, spells and abilities the moment they're brought into existence. They also possess knowledge of language and customs associated with, well, elder liches. Why is that? I haven't really thought about that. Elishnish blinked. Well, this is more difficult than I thought it would be. What is it that you're trying to tell me? I was attempting to convey some draconic knowledge, Elishnish said, but your native race, culture and language lack the appropriate means to do so directly. Dragons have necromantic knowledge. Not any more than anyone else, Elishnish said. It has more to do with the nature of the world, more specifically, the nature of souls. Lady Zaradnik gave her an odd look. Haven't you lived your entire life in the Azaluzia Mountains? I've been elsewhere, Elishnish said defensively. Like a bit of the Northern Ocean, and the Sorceress Kingdom. Her voice turned into a mutter at the last. Why did she have to feel ashamed about that? She was very well traveled by Frost Dragon standards. Then is it something you've learned from another dragon? Your parents, perhaps? I believe I've told you this before, Elishnish replied. Dragons have a special place in this world. In times long past, many of the most powerful were keepers of their respective realms, wielding great magics not seen since. This magic is the magic of the soul. I think the local magic casters simply refer to it as the magic of dragons. Knowledge of souls is something that dragons are born with as a matter of our nature. How come none of the other frost dragons talk about this? Does everyone you know go out of their way to tell you everything that they know? Elishnish asked. Of course not. There's no need to, and most non-dragons lack the capacity to understand. On a more practical level, it has very little bearing on our everyday lives. None of the dragons in our enclave, not even my wise mother or powerful father, are capable of wielding the magic of the soul. Elishnish found this fact vexing. It was akin to a vestigial instinct for something she never had, but should. Like being born knowing all the nuances of flight, but not having wings. To investigate this mystery was a part of her exploratory goals. Yet you're trying to teach me about this, Lady Zaradnik said. It's a bit uncharacteristic of you if you don't mind my saying so. I go out of my way to do plenty of things, Elishnish huffed, as long as they suit me. In this case, however, I am beholden to you. As frost dragons never forget a slight, so too do we never forget a favor. Perhaps you are purposely exploiting my nature, but I suppose that it is what it is. Elishnish paced around for a few moments before deciding to take a seat at the edge of Lady Zaradnik's bed. You are troubled over your new existence, Elishnish looked her in the eye, so I thought that I could return the favors you've shown me by making something clear. This something has to do with what I asked before, whether you are still you, or merely a shadow of what you were, or something else. I still feel like me. I'm sure every Elder Lich thinks the same thing, Elishnish snorted. Which brings me back to my example, what do you think the difference between an Elder Lich summoned by His Majesty and a wild Elder Lich is? The wild ones hate the living. That's true, Elishnish admitted, but this is more a general mode of behavior for wild undead, no? It is a matter of ecology rather than a quality specific to Elder Liches. Our Elder Liches are much stronger. Are they? Lady Zaradnik confirmed her statement with a nod. The Adventurer Guild records have had Elder Lich kills logged by Platinum-ranked parties in the past. Do the weakest few speak for all? Elishnish asked, how many Adventurer defeats have been attributed to fights against Elder Liches? This brings me to my next point. Do you not think it strange that the undead servitors created by His Majesty do not grow in raw strength in the same way that we might? I thought it strange at first, Lady Zaradnik answered, but as I learned more about magic, it became a sort of common sense. Did you know that wild Elder Liches do grow? They slowly gain in strength by absorbing mana. They can also learn new spells, skills, and abilities, unlike the Elder Liches created by His Majesty. Wild Elder Liches are also not limited to humanoid appearance. With so many differences, why are they still all considered Elder Liches? Why do we call them Elder Liches in the first place? How do they themselves somehow know what they are? Lady Zaradnik frowned. It was odd how so many took these things for granted. Several moments passed, and she appeared to be at a continued loss. The answer is that the source they draw from is the same. What does that mean? Perhaps it can be thought of along the lines of a concept? With summoning magic, one conjures the physical manifestation of said concepts using mana. All summons of the same being are fundamentally the same at the moment of creation. Whatever was present in that concept will be present in all summons of that being. Now, how does this apply to wild undead? Instead of mana, they form out of negative energy. That's right. Negative energy is formless, but if enough collects, it will develop a rudimentary sort of awareness and seek form. Many weaker undead take on a limited set of forms that are uncannily similar because these forms are all drawn from the same source. The same types of undead are known the world round by the same names, as far as my studies have shown. The Baroness fell silent in thought, rubbing her chin lightly with her forefinger. She picked up her chair and scooted closer. So the phenomena where the collection of lesser undead gives rise to incrementally stronger undead, why wouldn't they all just choose the form of stronger undead to begin with? I would venture to guess that it is a matter of cost, as it is with summoning magic. As subsequently more powerful summons require both a more powerful summoner and a greater pool of mana, so too does it work this way with negative energy. Elder Liches require a huge negative energy ecology to manifest, similar to the elemental or life energy that is required to give birth to nature spirits. So in my case, what? I think I understand what you're saying, but not what it means for me. It has to do with confirming whether you are an old soul, Elishnish told her, or a new one. Whether you are the shadow of a concept given form, or whether the soul of Ludmilla Zaradnik has adorned a new mantle. Very well, Lady Zaradnik straightened in her seat. How do we figure that out? Elishnish mulled over their options. Well, it would be simple if you had a talent. I do. Huh? I do have a talent, the Baroness told her. How do I confirm my identity with it? It would have saved her a very long-winded explanation if she had just let her know in the first place. If you have the same talent as before, Elishnish told her, then you already have. Talents are one of several conventionally readable components of the soul. I've heard that adventurers regularly come back from the dead. If a talent was tied to one's body, it would be lost upon death. What is your talent, by the way? It's true sight. The Baroness' answer was immediate. A chill ran down Elishnish's spine. As in true seeing? It's similar, Lady Zaradnik nodded, but since it isn't a spell or ability, the usual methods of thwarting such means do not work against it. Is that so? Elishnish started gathering the bedsheets to cover herself. Well, it's a nice talent, but mine is better. You have a talent? Forget I said anything. Lady Zaradnik leaned forward. Elishnish shifted nervously. What? Tell me, the Baroness smiled. No? Ask. Lady Zaradnik pounced, bowling Elishnish over onto the bedsheets. She lay there, shocked that a human could know she was undead. Arg! Elishnish screeched, that was why your elbow hurt me. You have supernatural weapons and armor now. Regular humans could never knock me back like that. Wait, what are you doing to me? Lady Zaradnik lay on top of Elishnish, arms wrapped around her tightly. Thank you, she nuzzled her shoulder, then sniffed. Thank you so much. What? It was something I couldn't figure out, Lady Zaradnik said. Others appear to treat it as a given, but I haven't been able to stop thinking about it, whether I'm still me, or if I'm just something pretending to be me. Elishnish sat up, lifting the teary undead female with her. I'm sorry, the Baroness said, I'll get off now. I feel like I've become more emotional since everything changed. I'm often worried or scared or depressed, isn't that strange? I thought undead was supposed to be more dispassionate, like the elder liches. Tell that to Lady Shiltier. Lady Zaradnik snorted, brushing back loose strands of chestnut hair. I suppose you have a point, she said. I'm glad that this question has finally been put to rest. I feel that my life has been slowly thawing out again only recently. I didn't think it meant so much to you people, Elishnish said. Humans usually don't even know who they are to begin with. Well, it would be infinitely more annoying if you were immortal, are you? Despite being undead, you're rather lifelike. I think so, Lady Zaradnik nodded. My hair and nails don't grow, they only grow back. I don't get hungry or tired without a ring of sustenance. Barely a month has passed, so it's difficult to say whether I've aged. I see. Well, I suppose you'll find out eventually. Are we even, now? The Baroness tilted her head curiously. Even? Yes, Elishnish said. I was returning a favor, but it seems that telling someone that they're themselves was worth more than I realized. Lady Zaradnik was taken aback for a moment, then reached out and took Elishnish's hands in hers. I didn't do what I did because I wanted to place you in my debt, she said. It's something I would do for any friend, though I think I've started developing an appreciation for what that means to someone with a limitless lifespan. If you are ever troubled with anything, or if you even just want to spend some time together, you can always come to me. Those are some very open-ended terms, Elishnish told her. All sorts of annoying things might happen. Forget terms, the Baroness replied, it's something you have to feel out. Frost dragons are supposed to be good at that, no? Humph, Elishnish snorted, you have this annoying tendency of only embracing the parts of me that you think you like. We'll see how that works out for you. Now, I have one curiosity I'd like to satisfy. I believe you'd be interested to know the answer as well. Ludmilla's curiosity grew over Elishnish's statement. Just how much did she know about what had become of her? The tales often spoke of the wisdom of dragons, but they rarely described it in any concrete terms. She certainly never imagined she would be intermittently buried by it. What is this curiosity? Ludmilla asked. I'm fairly certain I know the answer already, Elishnish answered, but do you know where you rose as an undead being? I do, Ludmilla nodded. The large mountain pass between the central and southern Azalisia mountains. Yes, that's what I thought. Elishnish swung her legs over the side of the bed and rose to her feet. Do you recall anything special when you became aware of yourself again? That dead frost giant's stink. Elishni's brow drew into a furrow. That's not what I meant. I wasn't aware that I was undead until after I returned and Lady Shiltia noticed my change in state. So you saw nothing? The frost dragon asked, felt or sensed nothing? Remembered nothing from what lies between one life and another? I haven't any clue about that last part, Ludmilla answered, but no, nothing at all. I just woke up and got to work trying to salvage the situation I was in. That single-minded devotion to duty as a human puts all of His Majesty's undead servants to shame, you know, Elishnish told her. Well, we still have the rest of the night. How about we go out there and take a look? Ludmilla stopped by the letter room to inform the elder lich on duty that she would be out for the night. Several minutes later, she and Elishnish were standing on top of the inner wall's southern gatehouse. The frost dragon reached into her infinite haversack, then paused. Do you get cold? I can feel cold, Ludmilla replied, but I don't think I suffer any adverse effects from it. I see, Elishnish removed her hand from the bag. I had to transport someone yesterday, but he didn't like it despite all of my efforts to keep him warm. Now, how shall we do this? Why not how we did it when following Sigurd to his challenge? We were flying excruciatingly slow back then, Elishnish replied. If you sit on my back on this trip, you might get blown off. How did your passenger from the other day do it? He wasn't a passenger, more like cargo. I carried him in my claws. Ludmilla briefly imagined herself dangling limply from the frost dragon's claws like a rodent in the talons of a hawk. Let's try sitting, first. Elishnish settled herself low to the ground and waited for her to climb up. Lady Shiltia had simply tossed her onto the frost dragon's back the first time, so she had no idea how to get on. As she carefully crept her way up a forearm, Elishnish's tail whipped around and smacked her off. Ow, that's ticklish. Elishnish shivered. Can't you just hop up in one go? Eventually, Ludmilla settled into a position just ahead of the frost dragon's wings. Is this all right? She asked. Maybe I should have changed out of my dress. No, keep it on, Elishnish answered. If you fall off, spread your arms and legs. What will that do? It will slow your descent relative to mine when I dive after you, she explained. At the altitude we'll be flying at, it takes a long time to hit the ground. Just stay very still and I'll scoop you up again. The world lurched as Elishnish took wing. The wind filled Ludmilla's ears as they ascended, making their way north. This wind is stronger than I thought, Lady Zaradnik yelled. We're flying straight into it, after all, Elishnish replied. You don't have to yell, by the way, I can hear you just fine. I'm speeding up now. The air flowing against them pushed against Ludmilla like a spring torrent. She dug in her knees reflexively. Gay. Elishnish made a choking noise. Don't squeeze so hard. Dragons are very delicate, you know. I'm sorry, I was just trying to recall what few riding lessons I've had. Riding lessons? I'm not a lizard or a horse. Ludmilla released the pressure on her legs. Then the next gust of wind lifted her right off of Elishnish's back. Great. Arms akimbo, she watched as Elishnish banked back towards her after several moments. The frost dragon tucked her wings and off to match her descent. Many undead can fly, Elishnish offered in conversational tones. Have you tried? No. How do I do that? Was she about to convey another tidbit of mysterious draconic knowledge? How would I know? Ask a ghost. Below the tops of the conifer trees slowly grew, looking very much like a carpet of green spikes. The ground is getting closer. Ludmilla's voice grew tense. As the wind whipped around them, Elishnish came within reach. Ludmilla grabbed her shoulder, pulling herself closer until she was splayed against the frost dragon's back. She felt pressed tightly against Elishnish as they leveled out, then sighed in relief. It's still a good 3,000 meters to the ground, there was no reason to panic. I'm afraid I don't have any flight instincts, Ludmilla replied. She sat up again, and the air immediately threatened to pull her off. Ludmilla tightened her legs, but she started feeling sorry for Elishnish as she squirmed in discomfort beneath her. How do I stay seated properly with all this wind? She asked. It constantly tries to pull me off. Make yourself smaller, Elishnish told her. It's the same idea as spreading out your arms and legs when you're falling to slow your descent. Right now, you're slowing us down by catching as much wind as possible. Lean forward. Ludmilla did as instructed, leaning low over Elishnish's neck. The wind was still hitting her full in the face, but she no longer felt like she would be blasted off at any moment. Below, the great forest of Tob started to give way to the lower peaks of the Azalizia Mountains. It took a week for the Azalizia expedition to go from the Great Lake to the high foothills, Ludmilla marveled. We just came all the way from Erantal in a bit over 30 minutes. Yes, imagine how I feel when I have to walk around or ride wagons. Speaking of which, one of the vampire brides told me that Warden's Vale is going to have the same air traffic rules as Erantal. That was the idea, yes. The Ministry of Transportation is trying to implement the same traffic regulations throughout the Sorcerer's Kingdom. Do you take issue with them? It's not that I have any wish to challenge Lady Shortier, Elishnish said carefully, but they're very inconvenient. I have to land at a designated place in the harbor, then ride a wagon to get anywhere. People who can fly should be allowed to fly. There are even races that are at a marked disadvantage when walking. Landing on a road or plaza would be extremely disruptive to the operations of the city, Ludmilla told her. The districts will be divided by walls, so you'll be able to use those once they come up. How about designated plots of land near popular spots in the city? She briefly reviewed the rough layout of Warden's Vale in her head. Even at this point in development, she hadn't finalized everything. New ideas always seemed to pop up that were superior to what she had come up with before. Well, there will be parkland throughout the city, she told her, but I'm not sure how convenient the placement will be. It's a work in progress. Maybe Lord Mayor has some idea of how to arrange everything nicely. Isn't it supposed to be your city? Elishnish asked. It is, Ludmilla answered, but I've relied on the kind assistance of many. I'd still be in my hole in the ground if not for them. Elishnish started her descent as the pass Ludmilla remembered came into view. This place looks very different from high above. She scanned the frozen landscape below. Do you know what happened here to turn it the way it is today? I only have the dwarf histories to go by, Elishnish replied. During the golden age of rune crafting, before the coming of the demon gods 2 centuries ago, the lands all around the mountain range were the territory of a single human nation. The frost dragon's recounting immediately struck her as odd. She knew of no such human nation. Are you sure? She asked. The histories that I was taught say that the humans of this region came from the theocracy after the demon gods brought ruin to the lands. Before that, the lands of the slain theocracy were humanity's final bastion. Beneath her, Elishnish's shoulders moved, as if to shrug. Well, I don't know anything about the theocracy's histories, but there are countless volumes in Fio Burkana's administrative archives containing centuries of trade and diplomacy with their neighbors. The dwarf kingdom still has much of their coinage still in circulation. I don't think anyone would go out of their way to make all that up. As a noble of the sorceress kingdom, I believe that they would happily cooperate if you wished to perform an investigation. Ludmilla's gaze unfocused as she dwelled on Elishnish's words. The frost dragon's voice rose again. Anyway, you non-flyers seem to love your passes very much, so you can probably imagine that it became a source of conflict. It was hotly contested during the Old Human Kingdom's wars of unification, with many great battles taking place. After the nation was brought under a single power, however, they still had to deal with the frost giants that would regularly raid the pass. Several major campaigns were launched in a monumental effort to quell the frost giant threat for the notion that the humans could secure a second route across the mountains that didn't contribute to dwarf coffers. It didn't work, I take it. No, Elishnish snorted. Though the human nation was large and powerful by human standards, the frost giants still stomped them flat. Dragons like my parents, who were adults at the time, probably had their fun as well. You should know by now what it's like to fight the races that rule these climes. Lady Zaradnik nodded slowly. Not only were the apex predators of the Azalizia Mountains extraordinarily powerful compared to races from the lowlands, but nature itself was also an enemy for any human army attempting to wage war in the peaks. How did the dwarves keep their highway free of frost giants and dragons? They didn't, Elishnish replied, but they kept it secure enough that merchants considered it well worth the risk. Dwarves, despite being so short, are also very good at fighting giants for some reason. But not dragons? I'm sure they tried, but frost dragons don't enact predictable raids or have insane cultures that fling people headfirst into death for some strange ideas of glory and the afterlife. Going by dwarven accounts, being attacked by a dragon is more akin to being struck by a natural disaster. There's not much you can do about it unless you just so happen to have someone present that was strong enough to fight back at that exact moment. I see. So the culmination of all this conflict overwhelmed the pass with negative energy. How many people died here? A lot. The lowlands all around here are ideal for breeding humans, so I'd say at least several million over the course of centuries. The dwarves were somewhat derisive over the entire affair, the toll of blood, they called it. Centuries. Oh yes, humans seem to love passing their vendettas from generation to generation. It's probably the only consistent thing about them, and they often consider it romantic. Not that it did them any good. Now the entire area is a practice range for frost giants. They descended within 2 kilometers of the pass. A furrow appeared over Ilishnish's brow. That's strange, she muttered. I don't think we're in the wrong place, but the landscape has changed on me recently before. No, you're right, Bloodmiller told her. I remember this location quite clearly. Something is off. Ilishnish glided in lazy circles over the icebound pass, and they confirmed their initial observations over the next few minutes. Across the frozen expanse, not a single skeleton or zombie could be seen. There should be tens of thousands of undead here, she said. Where did they all go?